Jewish state or nation of Israel? Jewish or Israelite? Is there a difference? Yes, there is. Some words we have often seen but rarely if ever asked the meanings. Hebrew, Israel, Israelite, Jewish or Jew, and Semitic. I will say it now. This will take you way out of your comfort zone. As much of this was and still is a surprise to me, it will probably even challenge some deep-seated views in your heart that as a people we don't generally talk about. The sources from which I found my information include the Bible, or the Tanakh, Jewish Almanac, Jewish Encyclopedia, Bible archaeology web pages, and Jewish historians and authors. The same way that I discovered the pagan roots of Christianity is the same way that I have discovered the actual meanings of the terms I mentioned in the opening statement of this presentation and how these terms have been purposely interchanged. The following quotes will be from an article entitled, "Who Are the Semites?" by Bernard E. Lewis. I came across this article on my jewishlearning.com. The original post was entitled, "Who is a Semite?" An important note to keep in mind as I quote from the article is that while the Torah, first 5 books of the Bible, is the foundation for both Judaism and Christianity, both groups have built their own set or sets of religious doctrine on top of the Torah, and the Torah is no longer the final authority. For a more detailed understanding on that topic, please go to my YouTube channel and watch the video entitled, "Whom Will You Serve, Yahuwah Elohim or Man?" In this presentation, I will be dealing primarily with modern Judaism and include Christianity along the way. This is not going to be comfortable, but when following the scriptures versus man, it never is. Do begin looking into this for yourselves, as this is not something that either Jewish or Christian clergy are going to want to discuss any more than either like discussing the pagan influences in their religion. This is that same process all over again, so please bear with me. I would also like to note that there are people who would share this information out of a spirit of anger and or pride. I share this information out of concern for my brothers and sisters in Yahushua, Jesus, to not follow the coming New World Order and New World spirituality that is coming upon all of us. For those of us who have accepted Yahushua as Messiah, please be aware that another Messiah is also coming who will be a counterfeit. This is why this information is important, and thus the point of this presentation. We do not need a third temple. In the future and eternal world, Yahuwah Elohim and his Messiah Yahushua will be the light and the temple. Revelation chapter 21 verses 22 through 23. And I saw no temple therein, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon, to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. Again, this will take you out of your comfort zone, and you may not want to hear this message, but this is not information that I came up with on my own, as most of the sources are Jewish, with the Tanakh, the Bible, being the top source. Initially, I read this article around 2 years ago, and it really shocked me, so much that I wrote down my thoughts in the process of reading it. At the time, I wasn't sure what I would do with this information, if anything at all. Since that time, while in the process of studying the Hebrew scriptures from the beginning and the book of Genesis, and learning of peoples and nations as identified by the Torah, too much was brought to my attention to stay silent about it any longer. This presentation will be an elaboration on what I briefly touched on in my second presentation concerning the identity of the biblical Hebrew Israelites. With that being said, let's begin. There are about 5 quotes from Mr. Lewis's article entitled, "Who Are the Semites?" on which I will focus. Then I will share my personal notes in response to the quotes from the article, one at a time. Mr. Lewis quote, "The Bible tells us that everyone on earth was drowned except for Noah and his family, and that all mankind are descended from his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The lines of descent from the 3 of them, described in the 10th chapter of Genesis, represent a kind of mythologized ethnology, enumerating the peoples of antiquity whose names were known at the time when this chapter was written, and setting forth the relationships between them." My personal note in response to quote number 1. If the account of the flood and Noah and his 3 sons is seen as a myth, then this discredits the genealogies going forward from that time. Even if you wanted to somehow skip over Noah and his 3 sons, you can't, because then there would be a gap in the history of Yahuwah Elohim's people, and one would have to simply invent a genealogy. This is a very important part of the Torah, and to dismiss it as such is to take away from God's word. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 2, Ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it, that ye may keep the commandments of Yahuwah your Elohim, which I command you. Mr. Lewis, quote, In later times the idea was widely adopted by Christians, and to a lesser extent by Muslims and Jews, that the three sons of Noah represented the eponymous ancestors of three major racial or linguistic groups. According to this interpretation, Ham was the ancestor of the dark-skinned peoples of Africa, Shem of the Hebrews and their various cognates, and Japheth the ancestor of the Medes, Persians, Greeks, and other peoples who many centuries later came to be known as Aryans. The total implausibility of such a theory in the face of the historical, linguistic, archaeological, and ethnographical evidence did not prevent its survival until the 19th century among scholars, and for very much longer among non-scholars. My personal note in response to quote number 2. To remove anything from the Torah, especially the account that provides the identity of Yahuwah Elohim's people, poses a serious problem. This is essentially the serpent in the garden again saying, Yea, hath God said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. The second we doubt what has been written in the scriptures, we are headed down the same path of destruction as the original Hebrew Israelites, whom Yahuwah Elohim scattered into the nations as a result of disobeying his instructions, the Torah. Mr. Lewis, quote, While Shem and his sons are of biblical antiquity, the Semite is of much more recent origin, dating from 18th century Europe. My personal note in response to quote number 3, yes, believe it or not, this article states that the Semite is of much more recent origin. Like most, I thought that the term Jew or Jewish is a term for someone who is from the ancient and biblical tribe of Judah. On the surface, that is how it appears, but this is not the case, which is why the author stated that the Semite is of much more recent origin. Please read the following. Some misconceptions about the word Jew. The term Jew originated in the late 18th century as an abbreviation of the term Judean and refers to a resident of Judea without regard to race or religion. People now referred to as Jews were known as Pharisees. Judaism today and Pharisaism in the time of Jesus are the same. From a webpage entitled Judaism 101, I found this statement, which is also helpful in explaining what Judaism is today. The Pharisees believed that God gave Moses an oral Torah along with the written Torah. They also gave a definition of Pharisee. The definition states the following: a movement of Judaism that began approximately 2,200 years ago. It is the forerunner of Rabbinic Judaism, which encompasses all of the movements of Judaism in existence today. From the Jewish Almanac, published in 1980, page 3, under the heading A Brief History of the Terms for Jew, we read, Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew, or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or a Hebrew. The first Hebrews may not have been Jews at all, and contemporary Palestinians, by their own definition of the term Palestinian, have to include Jews among their own people, although in choosing the name Palestine for their homeland, they have picked a name that originally signified the opposite, an enclave of foreigners. My personal note after reading this information from the Jewish Almanac: if the term Jews must be included among the term Palestinian, and the name Palestine originally signified an enclave of foreigners, then neither group is the biblical Hebrew Israelite, as the Jewish Almanac is frankly stating. After Mr. Lewis establishes that the term Semite originated in the 18th century, he begins the next category titled the Aryan. Aryan, relating to or denoting a people speaking an Indo-European language who invaded northern India in the 2nd millennium BC, displacing the Dravidian and other aboriginal peoples. This category begins with the following, quote, It was at this time that the two protagonists, the Semite and the Aryan, came into existence. Both of them are myths and part of the same mythology. My personal note in response to quote number 4. A brother in my congregation, Brother Daniel, once gave a sermon in which a particular statement that he made has never left my memory. He said, Satan takes a word and empties it of its meaning. This is exactly what the author has done with the word Semite. If the Semite and Aryan are both myths, then why not make an original term to identify them instead of intertwining them with an identity that has already been established, whether it be myth or not? This only causes confusion. We have heard the term Ashkenazi Jew, and if you haven't prior to this presentation, well, now you have. Because I am somewhat familiar with the biblical lineages, I recognize the term Ashkenaz right away. but I had not looked at the biblical lineages for some time, so I missed what was right in front of me. Online, I found an explanation stating that the term Ashkenaz no longer means what it once did. This is only because Satan wishes to insert a new meaning so that he can further displace Yahuwah Elohim's people. Genesis chapter 10, verses 2 through 5.
The sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshech and Taras. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz and Riphath and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha and Tarshish, Kittim and Dodanim. But these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations.
In the Bible, the word Gentile refers to the nations, non-Israelites, or heathens, that is, people without a god or following gods other than Yahuwah Elohim of Israel. My Messianic rabbi once told me that the word Gentile, in Hebrew, goy, means out of covenant, which is also very accurate. It's ironic that some of the most ultra-Orthodox, down to some of the less conservative of Judaism today, look down upon those they call goyim, meaning Gentiles, yet the very Torah through which we have been told establishes the identity of the Ashkenazi Jews as God's people, the Hebrew Israelites, says that Ashkenaz is a forefather of the Gentile nations. Genesis chapter 10, verses 21 through 32 begins a list of Shem's descendants. Please open the Bible and read the following scriptures, Genesis chapter 10, verses 21 through 32 in your Bible, which states the following.
Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born, the children of Shem, Elam and Ashur, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram. And the children of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. And Arphaxad begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber. And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begat Almadad, and Shelef, and Hazarmaveth, and Jerah, and Hadaram, and Uzal, and Diklah, and Obal, and Abimael, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. And their dwelling was from Mesha, as thou goest unto Sephar, a mount of the east. These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood.
The rest of Shem's descendants through Peleg are listed in Genesis chapter 11, verses 10 through 26, which states the following.
These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Arphaxad lived 35 years, and begat Salah. And Arphaxad lived after he begat Salah 403 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Salah lived 30 years, and begat Eber. And Salah lived after he begat Eber 403 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Eber lived 34 years, and begat Peleg. And Eber lived after he begat Peleg 430 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years, and begat Reu. And Peleg lived after he begat Reu 209 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Reu lived 32 years, and begat Serug. And Reu lived after he begat Serug 207 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years, and begat Nahor. And Serug lived after he begat Nahor 200 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years, and begat Terah. And Nahor lived after he begat Terah 119 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years, and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran.
Abram, whose name was later changed to Abraham after he came into covenant with Yahuwah Elohim, was the father of Isaac. Genesis chapter 21, verses 1 through 5.
And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived, and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him.
Isaac was the father of Jacob. Genesis chapter 25, verses 19 through 26.
And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian of Padan Aram, the sister to Laban the Syrian. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red, all over, like an hairy garment. And they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel. And his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them.
Jacob's name was changed to Yisrael. In English we say Israel, because he wrestled with an angel of Yahuwah Elohim. Yisra means to wrestle, El means God. Jacob had 12 sons who became the 12 tribes of Israel: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Joseph, and Benjamin. Genesis chapter 32, verses 24 through 30.
And Jacob was left alone. And there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh. And the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said unto him, What is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. And Jacob asked him, and said, Tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, Wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name? And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved.
In my King James Study Bible, the word Peniel in verse 30 literally means face of God. Israel and the Israelites, Genesis chapter 35, verses 22 through 26.
And it came to pass, when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12, the sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, and Levi, and Judah, and Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. And the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Padan Aram.
Notice, Ashkenaz is not listed in the descendants of Shem, Shemites, not Semites. Ashkenaz is listed in the descendants of Japheth. This is very plain to see, which is why the author at the beginning of this article deliberately dismissed the account of the flood and Noah and his 3 sons repopulating the earth as stated in the Torah. For further understanding concerning the terms Shemitic and Semitic, please watch this video by Open Diary entitled The Semites' Deception. Her video relates to my opening statement of this presentation concerning the words Hebrew, Israel, Israelite, Jewish or Jew, and Semitic, and how these terms have been purposely interchanged. The last section of this article is entitled Defining Race. MyJewishLearning.com, Mr. Lewis quote, The confusion between race and language goes back a long way and was compounded by the rapidly changing content of the word race in European and later in American usage. Serious scholars have pointed out repeatedly and ineffectually that Semitic is a linguistic and cultural classification denoting certain languages and, in some contexts, the literatures and civilizations expressed in those languages. As a kind of shorthand, it was sometimes retained to designate the speakers of those languages. At one time, it might thus have had a connotation of race, when that word itself was used to designate national and cultural entities. It has nothing whatever to do with race in the anthropological sense that is now common usage. A glance at the present-day speakers of Arabic from Khartoum to Aleppo and from Mauritania to Mosul, or even of Hebrew speakers in the modern state of Israel, will suffice to show the enormous diversity of racial types. My personal note in response to quote number 5. Since the author has completely moved away from Scripture, the layperson who has absolutely no exposure to the Hebrew Scriptures in the Bible will now look at a Semite as simply a modern creation with absolutely no ancient foundation. Here is what is interesting. While the author previously stated that the Semite is of much more recent origin dating from 18th century Europe, which would be a more modern creation, let's take a look at the definition for Semitic. Semitic, relating to or denoting a family of languages that includes Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic, and certain ancient languages such as Phoenician and Akkadian, constituting the main subgroup of the Afro-Asiatic family. I'm going to show you some ancient reliefs that date well before 18th century Europe and are today sitting in a British museum. I found these pictures on the following Bible archaeology webpage. Quote, Hebrew captives, particularly Judahites from Lachish, taken by the Assyrian army of King Sennacherib. This relief was excavated at ancient Nineveh. Now it came to pass in the 14th year of King Hezekiah that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. Isaiah chapter 36, verses 1 through 2. I also found these ancient reliefs of Israelites and Arabs who are both the sons of Abraham. Please visit the webpage of this person, which is well sourced for where he or she found these images. At the end of my presentation, I will list this person's webpage and the sources that were referenced for these pictures. Ancient relief of exiled Israelite musicians around 678 BC. Close-up of an Arab camelman. Arabs on camels battling the Assyrians. The person's note on this picture I find helpful in explaining why the majority of the people in the Middle East today appear so drastically different from the ancient inhabitants. Quote, before the Ottoman Turk invasion of Arabia, the Arabs looked almost identical to their Israelite cousins. Notice the beard, the locks, the nose, and the eyes. The Ottoman Turks are a Japhetic or Japhetic white people. The Arabs of today look so European because of Turkish-Arab race mixing. An Elamite soldier. Quote, the Elamites rose to power early in post-flood history. Genesis chapter 14, verse 1. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations. Quote, the Elamites are from the seed of Shem. Genesis chapter 10, verse 22. The children of Shem, Elam and Ashur, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram, while the Medes are from the seed of Japhet, or Japheth. Genesis chapter 10, verse 2. The sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tiras. Approximately 600 BC, these two nations merged to become the people known as the Persians. The Persian Empire ruled the earth for about 300 years. Quote, the present-day caste system of India is a direct result of the ancient merger of Madai and Elam. Daniel chapter 11, verses 1 through 2. Also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I shew thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. Quote, established approximately 2,500 years ago, India's caste system is based on skin color. The very light-skinned descendants of Madai are far more privileged than the very dark-skinned descendants of Elam. End quote. Again, this is why it is so important to understand and identify people according to the Torah and not man. Yahuwah Elohim will not change the identity of any people contrary to what he has already spoken, regardless of what the world wants to believe. I will share more on this in another part to my presentation about the biblical Hebrew Israelites. I also found this picture through an article on the following Jewish webpage, Haaretz. The following quote from the article accompanies this picture and is credited to Wikimedia Commons. Quote, "The tomb of Vizier Rekmir, ca. 1450 BC, famously shows foreign slaves making bricks for the workshop storeplace of the Temple of Amun at Karnak in Thebes, and for a building ramp. They are labeled captures brought off by His Majesty for work at the Temple of Amun. Semites and Nubians are shown fetching and mixing mud and water, striking out bricks from molds, leaving them to dry and measuring their amount under the watchful eyes of Egyptian overseers, each with a rod. The images bear out descriptions in Exodus chapter 1 verses 11 through 14 and chapter 5 verses 1 through 21. They made their life bitter with hard labor as they worked with clay, mortar, and bricks and in every form of slavery in the field. Exodus chapter 1 verse 14. I will read the King James translation. Exodus chapter 1 verse 14. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. Something else I must note that I don't think is popularly known, as it was not known to me until more recently. Zondervan's Compact Bible Dictionary. Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Ham is the father of the dark races, but he is not the father of the Negroes. Ham or Hem means hot or burnt-faced, black. Negro means black. Kemet was an ancient name for Egypt meaning black land or land of the blacks. The Negroes and Hamitic peoples are the dark races, but they are 2 different bloodlines. Nonetheless, both are still the dark races of the dark continent Africa, despite the non-black modern-day inhabitants that the world knows today. Here is a link to another video from Open Diary entitled The Tales of Mitzrayim and Egypt, which will give further information on this. Going back to the picture of the foreign slaves making mortar, the article from Haaretz states that both Semites and Nubians are shown. Question: who is the Semite and who is the Nubian? Where I'm going with this is that they look the same, but they are different bloodlines. This is why the Israelites were able to blend in with everyone else on the African continent, which goes back to Zondervan's Bible Dictionary for the definition of who Ham was. This is very important information that was never included in our American history books. Yet I have found that this information is common knowledge to many Africans and also Europeans who, if engaged in conversation on this topic, will reveal what they have known on this subject. Previously, the author of this article that I have been discussing, Who Are the Semites, stated, quote, that the 3 sons of Noah represented the eponymous ancestors of 3 major racial or linguistic groups. According to this interpretation, Ham was the ancestor of the dark-skinned peoples of Africa, Shem of the Hebrews and their various cognates, and Japheth, the ancestor of the Medes, Persians, Greeks, and other peoples who many centuries later came to be known as Aryans. The total implausibility of such a theory in the face of the historical, linguistic, archaeological, and ethnographical evidence did not prevent its survival until the 19th century among scholars, and for very much longer among non-scholars. End quote. To say that the account of the racial groups as stated in Genesis and the Torah is implausible and a theory in the face of historical and archaeological evidence does not hold up based on these ancient reliefs that have been uncovered. Please keep in mind that although this information may be quite uncomfortable, as I said in my opening statements, when following God versus man, it is usually not comfortable. I am aware that there are some brothers and sisters presenting this information out of a very angry spirit, which is not of the Most High or Messiah Yahushua. But there are some Holy Spirit-filled brothers and sisters sharing this information in the correct manner that Elohim would have it done. One day we will all be gathered to worship the Most High in Jerusalem, and people of every nation who are now also Israel will be there. Isaiah chapter 56 verses 6 through 7. Also the sons of the stranger that join themselves to Yahuwah to serve him, and to love the name of Yahuwah, to be his servants, everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it. and taketh hold of my covenant. Even them will I bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar, for mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people. I was very much a supporter for the Jewish state from a biblical stance, and I definitely did my part to let others know on my Facebook wall. I came across the article, Who Are the Semites?, intending to learn more about the Jewish people so that I could better defend them and their homeland from a biblical stance. However, I ended up finding information that I clearly knew was in direct opposition to the very scriptures that I thought testified to their identity as the Shemitic people of Israel. This does not mean that I am against my Messianic Jewish brethren, or just simply Jewish brethren at all. On the contrary, they have grown up with the Israelite heritage and know far more about it than many of us waking up to the Hebraic roots of the faith in the Hebrew Bible. There is much to glean from our Jewish brethren. But God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. John chapter 4, verse 24. What is it then? I will pray with the spirit, and I will pray with the understanding also. I will sing with the spirit, and I will sing with the understanding also. 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 15. No matter what I talk about concerning the Bible, prophecy will always be central, because the Hebrew Bible is all about Yahuwah Elohim restoring the relationship between himself and his covenant people, including all those who are and will be grafted into this covenant, which means that if I'm misidentifying people biblically, then I cannot very well be on the correct timeline of events as the Most High has already spoken through his prophets in ancient times. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 26. I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. This is just one of many telling scriptures that will cause anyone to stop and rethink whether God actually brought his people into the promised land on May 14, 1948. Per the Holy Scriptures, the Israelites, all 12 tribes, while in exile, lost remembrance of who they were. God made it this way. Yahuwah Elohim also caused the world to forget who the Israelites were. However, this was only temporary. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 through 3. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither Yahuwah thy Elohim hath driven thee, and shalt return unto Yahuwah thy Elohim, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that then Yahuwah thy Elohim will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither Yahuwah thy Elohim hath scattered thee. 1 Baruch chapter 2, verses 28 through 31. As thou spakest by thy servant Moses in the day when thou didst command him to write the law before the children of Israel, saying, If ye will not hear my voice, surely this very great multitude shall be turned into a small number among the nations, where I will scatter them. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people, but in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves, and shall know that I am the Lord their God, for I will give them an heart and ears to hear. 1 Baruch is a book from the Apocrypha, which can be found in the Old Testament of Catholic Bibles. The only time I will use information from an extra-biblical source is when it agrees with what the Torah has already stated, and in this case, it agrees with Torah quite well. In the land of their captivity, or while in exile, the Israelites will have to rediscover who they are. This cannot be said of the people who are currently occupying the Holy Land. The Ashkenazim identified themselves as Jews long before the modern Jewish state was formed, which is in direct opposition to what the scriptures say. But the Ashkenazim are fulfilling biblical prophecy by being in the Holy Land, just not in the way that the church has taught us. Genesis chapter 9, verse 27. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Japhet, or Japheth's name, already means Yah will enlarge, or God will enlarge. But the word enlarge just before Japheth's name actually means something else. In the Strong's Concordance number H6601, this word enlarge actually means to delude, to entice, to persuade, or to flatter. Now let's reread this part of Genesis chapter 9, verse 27 with Strong's number H6601. God shall delude, entice, persuade, or flatter Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. You now understand that Ashkenaz is the son of Japheth. Therefore, Japheth is currently dwelling in the tents of Shem as prophesied. That's what was fulfilled on May 14th, 1948. There is much more to this that the scriptures say right in the open. The reason we haven't seen it is because Satan has had a blanket over the heads of the church for all of these centuries in order to help bring his New World Order and New World spirituality to fruition, and it is on the way quicker than we realize. For a very scriptural and straightforward understanding of May 14th, 1948, I urge you to watch this video entitled Return of the Jews, Fact or Fabricated by Yona, Y-O-N-A, Golab, G-O-L-A-B, and study the scriptures and history for yourselves. Again, as I said earlier in this presentation, this is all about the coming false Messiah with his New World Order and New World spirituality. The power behind it is Satan himself, not the Ashkenazim. Pray as stated in the book of Revelation, to the one who has ears to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the assemblies, or the churches. Traditions are not bad as long as they don't replace the word of God. Pray for the Ashkenazim and Sephardim to wake up and return to the pure Torah, free of traditions that overrule Yahuwah Elohim's word. Pray most of all for the biblical Hebrew Israelites to wake up to who they really are and return to the Most High, as well as praying for the Hebrew Israelites of the northern house of Israel, remaining in the far-off places in Africa after being dispersed from the promised land in the east of Africa, because this is their covenant with him as the natural branches in the olive tree. Therefore, they are able to be grafted back into their own olive tree through faith in Yahushua. Romans chapter 11, verse 24. Opposition to this awakening is very much alive, but it is of no concern. Acts chapter 5, verses 38 through 39. And now I say to you, keep away from these men and let them alone. For if this plan or this work is of men, it will come to nothing. But if it is of God, you cannot overthrow it, lest you even be found to fight against God. Revelation chapter 3, verse 9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. This information is vital, although some people do not want to hear it, not because they don't understand, but because they simply don't like what they understand. The same way that I advocated for the Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews when I believed that they were the biblical Hebrew Israelites is the same way that I am advocating for who I now know are the true biblical Hebrew Israelites. This concludes part 1 to my presentation, The Biblical Hebrew Israelites. Until part 2, Shalom.